My mom always said, raise boys tough and girls rich, but in our family both the boys and the girls were raised tough. She claimed it was to toughen us up. Only through enduring hardships could one rise above. So my brother and I, growing up, lived worse off than my mom's dog, just not starved to death. In 8th grade, I was so hungry that I almost got attacked by a creepy old bachelor over a bowl of instant noodles. My brother found out and beat up the guy, then dropped out of school to support my education. As adults, when we needed our parents' help, they didn't lift a finger. They even worried we'd rely on them forever, so they lent out the house and all their money to relatives, saying their own kids weren't reliable. But eventually, our parents ended up sick and bedridden, and none of those relatives cared. My brother took care of them until he died of cancer, worn out. I was so distressed by them that I ended up falling down the stairs and died. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in 8th grade. As soon as I did, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I had to lean against a wall to keep from collapsing. Looking around, I was shocked to find I was back on my middle school playground. I thought, didn't I die by falling down the stairs? How am I here? Linda, are you ready? A voice called out. I turned to see my childhood friend running towards me. I was stunned. Had I been reborn? Lily, what year is it? I asked. Are you sick? How could you forget the year? Next week's the midterm, remember? We were gonna go to Peach Blossom Island with my cousin after. She felt my forehead and that triggered my memory. This was our 8th grade spring semester. But in my previous life, I hadn't gone to Peach Blossom Island with her. Because that afternoon, I was almost attacked for a bowl of noodles out of hunger. I was starving. Even now, although I drank a lot of water, I was so hungry I was dizzy. Back in 2009, I was in boarding school with only $100 a month. That covered not just food, but school supplies, sanitary products, and study materials. Last Friday, the entire class had to pay for the semester's English newspaper. My parents didn't give me money. I scraped together pocket money and that month's allowance to hand it to the teacher. But after handing it over, I had no money left for living expenses. My brother then gave me half of his allowance. Even with his help, I was down to just 3 buns and tap water a day. During PE today, I was so weak from hunger that I fell while running. I splashed water on my face at the sink to refresh myself, and drank some while I was at it. But in my past life, when it came to dinner, I had no money and was too proud to admit hunger, so I pretended not to be. I ended up separated from Lily and her friends. Passing the school shop, I couldn't resist the smell of instant noodles and approached. But this time I wasn't about to roll over. I saw a teacher walking by on the field and fainted intentionally. When I woke up, I was in the school nurse's office, my brother sitting at the foot of my bed. Years of starvation had left him thin and frail. I couldn't hold back tears. In my past life, my brother had nearly married at 30, but he needed a little help for a down payment on his apartment. Our parents refused and even insulted him, yet they lent money to our cousin for her business. He didn't get the apartment, and his engagement broke off. When I got married, my parents took my dowry money and only gave me 2 quilts. My husband's relatives mocked me. My brother stepped in, putting up his house money for my dowry to save face. When I was pregnant, my husband's factory closed, putting us in massive debt. I asked my parents for help, but they turned me away, saying a married daughter isn't their concern. When Dad had a stroke and was hospitalized, Mom asked our cousin for help, who claimed her business had failed, needing support instead. My parents ended up losing their savings to that cousin. My dad was bedridden, and Mom broke her hip caring for him. Doctors said she'd be bedbound for 5 years. Our other cousin took advantage and kicked them out from their own house. My brother had to take them in and care for them in his small rental. He managed their care. I footed the bills. They were settled, but we had to face our parents' anger if asking for their own money or house back from the cousins. It was always someone else's fault, never those cousins. My brother's health declined rapidly, and he looked older than Dad. He eventually succumbed to stomach cancer alone and in pain. I learned he'd been scolded for taking an aspirin. As my brother looked up at me, he seemed to brighten a bit. Got you some glucose. How are you feeling?
I'm all right.
Are you okay? I've missed you so much. I held my brother tightly, feeling his warmth and life, and couldn't stop crying. I vividly remembered watching my brother suffer silently, pained beyond words. I prayed to the heavens, willing to trade 10 years of my life so he wouldn't have to suffer as much. He had a tough life before, so in this life I got a second chance and I'll make sure he doesn't walk the same path. My brother was always better at school than I was, always in the top 20 of his grade. But in our last lives, he gave up studying to work and support me. After that, our parents called him useless and lacked ambition, and he never had the strength to argue back. All right, don't cry, or your eyes will get all puffy, he said with a warm smile, patting my back just like he used to when I was upset as a kid. I took a couple of deep breaths, looked at him again and managed to smile through my tears. Then I asked, bro, did the teacher tell mom and dad about me passing out? His face darkened. What's the use of telling them? They just come here to scold you, nothing else. I nodded. Yeah, for sure. My parents would just pay for the glucose and then probably tell me I'm wasteful and dramatic, finding every reason to lecture me. I'd rather give them a headache first than them giving me one. Later on, I convinced my brother to go to his evening study session. Before he left, he handed me his money and told me to eat well and not go hungry. I was stunned. Maybe it was because I faked fainting to get into the medical room and he was worried. What about you? You gave me your money, I asked. I borrowed some from a classmate, don't worry about me, he replied. He barely stepped out before Lily came by to see me, and they crossed paths at the door. Oddly, Lily had this inexplicable blush when she walked in. She took one look at me, her expression changed instantly, and she stuffed a bread roll into my hands. The doctor said you have low blood sugar, it's from not eating enough. Why are you dieting in the first place? You're already so thin, if you lose any more weight, you'll vanish. Before, I told her I was dieting because I didn't want her to see I couldn't afford much. Didn't want her looking down on me for eating plain bread rolls. I hung my head as she lectured me, and suddenly tears were rolling down, landing on the plastic wrap. Lily was startled. Linda, don't cry. I was just scolding you a bit. Why are you crying? I wiped my face hastily and grasped her hand. No, it's not what you said. It's just... Then, I told Lily how my parents only give me and my brother $100 a month for everything. At around 14-15, emotions are all over the face, and Lily was so shocked she started stammering, your family doesn't seem that poor? I always see your parents dress well and they have a car. I even saw your mom buy a $1,000 dress without blinking while out shopping. How do they only? I laughed bitterly. My parents believe in tough love, say it's to build our grit, or else we'll amount to nothing. Lily was furious, practically jumping up. Are they crazy? How can you study if you're not even fed? Weren't you ever clear about needing more money? I did, but they wouldn't listen, I said. Lily was both upset and anxious, and seeing me cling tightly to the bread, she softened and hugged my shoulders as her voice quivered a bit. What'll you do now? Maybe I can ask my parents for some extra money so you can eat with me at school? I shook my head. No need, but Lily, could you do me a favor? When my parents got taken to the police station, they were utterly confused because the cops said someone accused them of child abuse. As they arrived, I was at the noodle shop across from the station, polishing off my third bowl. The homeroom teacher poured me some soup and said, take your time, if it's not enough, we can get more. Thanks, teacher, I said, feeling embarrassed as I smiled at him. He sighed and went outside. Then I overheard the head teacher argue, of course it's abuse. Being severely anemic can be lethal, and I haven't accused them of attempted murder yet. Holding my blood test results, she added sharply, Linda's parents, right? Let's talk over here. Teacher, please wait for Linda. My homeroom teacher tried to calm things down as the head teacher walked briskly to the police station. Nolan, calm down. My parents attempted to greet him, but upon seeing me in the noodle shop, my mom's face turned sour, ready to storm in. I acted terrified, pretending to hide behind the teacher, so he stopped her. Linda's mom, you should head over first, the police have some questions. I'll bring Linda once she finishes. Reluctantly, my parents were led over to the station. Finally, after I finished eating, feeling a bit anxious, I approached the teacher. Teacher, I'm done. All right, let's go together, he said. He quickly paid, and as we walked towards the police station, my pace slowed, showing my reluctance. The teacher sighed, don't worry, I'm here for you. My teacher knew my family's background, but he couldn't imagine I only survived on $100 monthly, having to cover everything with it. I couldn't keep the tears at bay anymore and broke down at the entrance, telling the teacher I was scared. I caused such a scene, and my parents. They're obsessed with saving face and would never forgive me for embarrassing them. Last time I was starving, almost ended in disaster thanks to the convenience store owner's coaxing. Luckily, my brother was quick to notice. He saw the old creep holding me and nearly beat him senseless. But when our parents arrived, they blamed me, suggesting I led him on, called me shameless. My brother stood firm, shielding me, snapping back that their stingy idea of tough love left their daughter starving, vulnerable to anyone with just a bowl of noodles. They had no right to criticize me. But how could my parents accept such accusations? They said, "What girl sleeps with a man just because she can't eat enough?" They called me shameful and said it would have been better if they didn't have me at all, so they wouldn't be so embarrassed now. They refused to let my brother call the cops on the old bachelor, saying it would bring them even more shame if he were imprisoned. In the end, they paid the guy a few $1,000s to settle things, but then shouted at school that I was a disgrace. After that, I became kind of famous at school. I begged my parents to let me transfer, but my mom just sneered at me. She said, "You brought this on yourself and there's no escaping the consequences just because you change places. You should have known there would be repercussions for your actions. You made your bed, now you lie in it. What, you think we can just be there to clean up your mess forever?" She added. I thought, since they know mistakes come with consequences, I better make sure they follow through. I cried for a long time outside the police station at a time when people were out and about after dinner. Soon enough there was a crowd. When they learned my parents only gave me and my brother $100 each per month for all expenses, they were outraged. "Oh my God, who does that? If you can't support your kids, why have them?" Someone said. "Yeah, they shouldn't have kids they can't afford." Another chimed in. "Hey, isn't she from the David household?" Someone pointed out. I turned to see who was speaking and realized it was a distant cousin of mine, the kind who can't keep her mouth shut. I sobbed a bit and called out to her, "Cousin." She eagerly pushed through the crowd and excitedly started speaking before I could. "I know her, we're from the same village, even a bit related." Her parents did boast that kids should be raised tough, showing off that their kids only get $100 a month. Told us not to spoil our kids because poor kids learn responsibility early. But y'all don't know. Her mom splurges on herself, never suffers for anyone else, she continued, clucking her tongue. My cousin and my mom don't get along mainly because my mom loves to show off. So my cousin had lots to say, and the onlookers were very entertained. The principal reminded us we had a report to make, but my cousin asked why I was at the police station. I explained how I'd fainted at school and a checkup revealed low blood sugar and anemia, which led to my parents being reported. Hearing about my parents at the station, the onlookers were vying to support me. The security tried stopping them, but they were folks from the neighborhood so they didn't. My cousin dragged me inside with the crowd. Inside, my dad looked defeated and my mom was teary-eyed. She glanced at the principal and said, "I calculated. $100 a month at school should be enough. They're my kids, I'd never let them suffer, right? You're being unfair." But the principal came from a strong line. Her mom, Lily's grandma, was a recently retired school principal. She wasn't one to be intimidated. She always did what she believed was right, and everyone, students and parents alike, respected and feared her. She smirked at my mom. "Sure, our school's minimum standard is just congee for breakfast, vegetables for lunch, and a bun for dinner. $5 a day is doable. But can you say your daughter won't need 2 notebooks a month or a single pen? Or no personal hygiene products? This isn't raising kids, you couldn't even raise a dog on that money. I've heard Linda's dog grooming costs a fortune. Yet you only give your kid $100 a month, proudly too. If you can't support them, we have government subsidies. Both kids perform well academically. Teachers could chip in, classmates could donate, there's no need for them to go hungry. Yet, you keep the title of parents without doing the job. This is nothing short of child neglect." The principal didn't just have the education and backing. She was sharp-tongued, leaving my parents red-faced and flustered. My dad tried to defend them, saying we give them better conditions than what we had. We weren't worried about food or books. What more do they need? My dad always followed my mom's lead, sometimes blindly, even causing friction with my grandparents. My mom argued, yes, we had it worse, they live much better than we did. Plus, if they needed more money, they could have told us. How were we to know? Standing at the door, I meekly said, "But Mom, I did tell you a lot that the money wasn't enough." Hearing me, my cousin pulled me behind her as I started crying again. "Don't be scared. Let me handle this. She pointed at my mom and said, seriously? Couldn't you ask if it was enough? Many of us have told you to give them more money. But you said that not giving them much meant they'd have to look after you in the future. You think you know your kids that well? Officers, if you doubt me, I can call more relatives to confront them. My cousin held an aura of excitement and pride, looking ready to battle it out with my mom. I hadn't expected to meet my cousin today, but with her spreading the word, I'm sure it'll be a lesson my parents won't soon forget. The onlookers were enjoying the drama, supporting my cousin's words as some added, when we were young that was a different world. Today's world is different. Yeah. Why not compare with our grandparents' times? Surviving was tough enough then. True enough. A few bystanders even offered, if you can't feed them, say so. We can crowdfund at my work. We can at least keep them fed. What kind of era is this that people are still not getting enough to eat? Just look at this poor girl, she's so thin her clothes can barely stay on. They were surrounded by pointing fingers and hurtful comments. At first, they tried to argue back, but for every word they spoke, someone would refute them tenfold. Eventually, the two were so angry they couldn't even speak. I found it amusing and suddenly remembered how, in my previous life, they spread rumors at school about me almost being molested. Everyone knew about it. Because of them, I was isolated, bullied, and had horrible rumors spread about me. Back in middle school, Lily hadn't gone to the city yet and would stand up for me, so things were manageable. But when high school came around, she went to the city, and I was left at the school's high school division. That was the darkest time of my life. I was bullied into depression and nearly took my own life. When I ended up in the hospital, my parents said it was my fault for not focusing on my studies and imagining things, claiming I was making myself crazy. They told everyone I was faking it, acting dramatic. They wondered how they ended up with such a difficult child like me. In her eyes, I was never good enough. Yet when someone complimented me, especially praising her parenting, she'd beam with pride. I used to not understand why she was that way, but now I know. She thrived on building her joy from the misery of me and my brother. Our dignity and pride meant nothing to her. All she wanted was to be praised and admired. Sadly, neither my brother nor I could provide that. So, since they love to be noticed and be the center of attention so much, now let them have it. Amid the crowd's accusations, Mom couldn't handle it and hid behind Dad in tears. Dad, feeling sorry for her, didn't know what she whispered to him, but he turned to me and shouted, "Linda, do you have any respect for your mom and me? Tell me, except for not giving you lots of extras beyond living costs, have we wronged you? We didn't give you lots of money to cultivate character. No pain, no gain, they say. You really don't appreciate it. You're full of schemes over nothing, needing even to drag us to the police station." Dad started toward me, but right then, a booming voice came from the police station entrance. "What's this nonsense about no pain, no gain? Were you raised with pain and gain? When weren't your mom and I always there for you kids? And now you're saying no pain, no gain, torturing two little ones. Scumbags." I turned to see my brother arriving with Grandpa and Grandma. When he saw me, a flash of concern crossed his face. I signaled to him that I was all right, and he finally relaxed. Grandpa and Grandma gave me a couple of looks. Due to my mom, they weren't too close to me, but Grandma couldn't help sighing when she saw how skinny I'd become. When Dad saw Grandpa and Grandma, his face hardened as if constipated. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? If we didn't come, would these kids have any future?" Grandpa immediately began berating my parents. My cousin chimed in agreement, exaggeratingly recounting my plight to Grandpa. "Exactly, Uncle, you have no idea how much this kid's been through. I didn't expect these two elderly folks to come." Amidst the commotion, I tugged at my brother's sleeve. "Bro." Thinking I was worried, he patted my head reassuringly. "Don't worry, with me around, you won't be wronged anymore." I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat. In my previous life, when Dad was paralyzed and Mom fractured a bone, my brother took on the burden of caring for them both. But I knew what they were like, and when I saw him graying in his 30s, I thought I'd relieve him a few days each month to give him some rest. But he outright refused. Even in death, his biggest worry was that I'd suffer their abuse and wrongs if I took over. I sniffed and glanced sideways at him. His cold expression was mixed with the apathy of another lifetime, and my heart tightened. I wanted to ask why he brought Grandpa and Grandma, but I swallowed the words. Just think of it as him worrying about me fainting from hunger. Grandpa scolded my parents mercilessly at the police station. It was harsh. By the end, Mom was livid, almost deformed with anger. But given that they were at a police station and others were also criticizing her, she couldn't retaliate and had to swallow it. Her glare at my brother and me turned venomous. Later, the police scolded my parents, telling them to consider realistic situations and not push us too hard, to at least make sure we got enough to eat. My parents nodded repeatedly in agreement, but nobody expected Grandpa to suddenly say, "I've long seen what kind of people you are. You're promising all this right now, but who knows how you'll mistreat the kids once outside. If you can't properly raise the kids, then let me do it. With today's education standards, send me child support, and I'll provide them with living expenses each month. If they want to live at school, fine. If not, we've got an old house in the city. Your mom can go take care of them." As Grandpa laid it out, I suddenly remembered Grandma's family house in the county. Since she was the only one left from her family, the property was hers. Before long, it would be demolished. But back when I was nearly assaulted and my brother dropped out of school because of it, Grandpa and Grandma wanted to come take care of us so my brother could continue his studies. Mom threw a huge fit, claiming my brother was disobedient, threatened to die, and said that I brought this upon myself, calling me a jinx. Anyone who tried to intervene would have to deal with her. She said she wanted my brother and me to understand responsibility and deal with the consequences of our decisions. Grandpa and Grandma thought she was out of her mind, while Dad defended her. It nearly tore the family apart. Until Mom found out prematurely that the county property was slated for demolition. She kept the news to herself and took the initiative to smooth things over with my grandparents, then proposed the family split. She used the excuse of needing to take care of my brother and me in town to get the house from my grandma for her and my dad. My grandparents didn't want to make a big scene, so they agreed to my mom's suggestion for splitting up. Later, the house was torn down and replaced by 2 apartments and a little over $600,000. My dad worried my uncle and aunt would make a fuss, so he discussed with my mom, deciding to give most of it to my grandparents, saying he wouldn't be involved in their care in the future. My mom wasn't thrilled, but since my dad said so, she didn't argue. Being the eldest daughter-in-law, she had earlier promised to take care of my grandparents. In reality, she didn't want to look after them, so she agreed when my dad made the suggestion. Initially, she thought the $50,000 was too much, but if they gave less, my uncle and aunt wouldn't agree, leading to more drama. To maintain her image of being generous and respectful, she gave in. This smoothed relations with my dad's side of the family quite a bit. They enjoyed the benefits and flattered my parents. My parents felt proud and joyful. Compared to them, my brother and I had it much worse. Because of my parents' oppression, others would lecture us, trying to please them. We hated going home. But there's no way they're going to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. My grandpa was determined to make my parents provide our living expenses and even wanted it in writing, witnessed by the police. My dad couldn't convince him, so he told the police to let my brother and me choose whether to stay with my grandparents or parents. My brother coldly watched their act. "Mom, Dad, aren't we family with grandparent too? How can you say it like that? Grandpa and Grandma take care of our schooling, we're not leaving you." I cried and knelt in front of my mom. "Mom, I want to study, I don't want to starve, please let my brother and me go." My mom was taken aback and stepped back. My dad held her while hearing whispers from around and wanted to kick me out of anger. I thought if he kicked me, I'd exaggerate my injuries to settle the matter of my and my brother's future. Surprisingly, my brother stood in the way before my dad could kick me. He fell and I rushed over, whispering into his ear, "Pretend to faint." Our sibling bond was strong, and he immediately complied. I screamed in horror, pretending and actually crying as memories of our past life overwhelmed me. I almost couldn't breathe. Even when my brother was taken to the hospital after several tests, I couldn't stop crying. Just like me, my brother was diagnosed with anemia, and he had severe stomach issues. After this incident, my parents had no choice but to give my grandparents our guardianship. Privately, my mom spitefully said, "If they want to raise them, let them. If you want to break away from us, make it clean. I won't give a penny. Let's see how long they can manage." My brother and I ignored her, settling into my grandparents' small courtyard. I didn't ask my brother why he sought out my grandparents or talked them into taking us in. But I knew it was just the first step to breaking free from our parents. Who knows what the future holds? One thing's sure, my parents won't give up easily. The town and village know my parents gave only $100 a month, starving my brother and me. Now it's public gossip. Sometimes, in front of my mom, people would scold their kids, study hard/eat well/sleep well, or I'll only give you $100 a month, you'll starve. It embarrassed my mom. So, by not paying child support, they tried to force our hand. My grandparents were old, living off a few acres and selling poultry. My mom's family looked down on these things, so they usually went to my uncle and aunt. When my grandma was still in the country, she'd help my uncle with my little cousin. The courtyard rental helped them a bit too. Now, caregiving us left no time or money. My parents' ploy was clear, but before they turned my uncle and aunt against us, I took the mediation record to court, suing my parents for neglect. My dad works at a steel mill as a team leader. I made sure the court papers went straight to his workplace so it spread fast there. Last lifetime, he got promoted to workshop director by year end, but not this time if I can help it. They're trying to trouble us, so I'll give them trouble too to keep them busy. I didn't tell my brother about it. We switched to commuting because Grandma's place was close to school. He'd study late into the night after school. With finals coming, I don't want to bother him. This life, I want him to achieve his dreams. My dad, furious about the summons, tried confronting us. My mom started crying. Linda, aside from not giving you all enough before, what have we done wrong? Do you really want to tear this family apart? My dad called me a bad omen and raised his hand to slap me. I was so scared I took off running and yelled, "Mom, Dad, don't hit me." I was just thinking, remember how Auntie didn't pay child support for cousin, and you had her take it to court? Well, I'm in the same boat because you're not giving any support for me and my brother. And if I try to bring it up, you just yell at me. What else am I supposed to do? We're practically starving here. My uncle had been divorced once before, and that's when my cousin was born. But when they split, my cousin didn't go with her mom. Later, my uncle remarried, and they wouldn't let my cousin see her mom. The first wife said if she couldn't see her kid, she wouldn't pay child support. That dragged on for years until my parents and others pushed my uncle to sue for child support. After the court ruled, my uncle got a bunch of money, but none of it ever seemed to help my cousin. She didn't even finish middle school before the new wife made her start working. In the end, it was her real mom who took her in and helped her keep studying. So really, I'm just using the same playbook. Why are my parents so upset? I was yelling at the top of my lungs, and Lily ran to get her aunt. Lots of classmates knew about the time I fainted from hunger and went to the hospital. Plus, I'm usually one of the top students, and since Lily is such a good friend, most of our classmates were on my side. When they saw my parents getting physical, everyone got pretty mad and surrounded me. Soon, both the head teacher and our class teacher showed up. They'd been nearby and heard what was happening. Hearing my dad never paid the grandma's living expenses, they weren't too happy about it, especially the head teacher. He said, "Look here, I already suggested that if you can't afford to raise the kids, then officially cut ties and let the school help get some financial aid. You can't take the title of parents and not act like it. Why should she not take legal action? Isn't this neglect?" Linda here did the right thing, knowing how to protect herself using the law. As parents, it's easiest for you to cause harm. She only fought back a little, and now you're causing this scene, even getting physical. What kind of example is that? Do you think the school staff are just going to sit back and watch? Almost as soon as the head teacher said that, a classmate called out in support, and everyone started clapping. When the teacher gave them a look, they quieted down, standing respectfully. My parents were left speechless, their faces red with embarrassment. I explained, "Dad, Mom, I wasn't trying to break up our family. I just couldn't do anything else. When I called you, you didn't answer. When I came home, you wouldn't let me in. I had no other choice. The court said if you pay regularly, it won't affect you that much." That's a load of bull. My dad responded, his face furious. "Do you know now everyone at the factory thinks I don't support my kids? That's messed up my chances for promotion this year." He jabbed a finger at me, seething with anger. I cowered behind the head teacher. Our class teacher jumped in to defend me, saying, "You can't blame Linda. If she could reach you and if you were paying support like you're supposed to, there wouldn't be any problems." Frustrated, my parents started hurling insults until security escorted them out. That day they went back to their hometown and argued with my grandpa, saying it was his fault for insisting on raising my brother and me, making him lose face. Then they tried to go to the small courtyard to yell at Grandma, only to find the head teacher visiting with a cop with gifts for Grandma. They walked right into it, got a talking to by the police, and eventually paid up before leaving shamefaced. I know the head teacher was behind bringing the cop. Our grades weren't great that semester, but because of my parents' antics, everyone knew about it, and they just figured we were affected by the family mess. Once summer break hit, my brother and I decided to crack open the textbooks and spent days practicing problems. Before the new school year, I figured my parents would start their games again, mainly trying to hold up my brother's tuition. And just like I thought, 2 weeks in, no matter how many times I called or tried to reach them, they wouldn't pay. My brother had already started the process to apply for a student loan over the summer, but thanks to our parents, some paperwork got stuck, and nothing went through. Seeing my parents were being unfair, I decided to fight back.